Hello Internet and welcome to Commander 1-on-1. In this episode we'll tackle something bigger, the concept of using your graveyard as a game resource. This could be a part of a much bigger topic, something like understanding alternative resources, but I decided to break it down a little bit to be more focused and easier to understand. Why are we starting with the graveyard, you ask? The quick answer would be because that's the zone that is the most often ignored by players with less game experience. And I had examples of this in my playgroup. I think the name of the zone is partially responsible for that. You do not tend to think about a graveyard as something to be used as a resource. It's a place where resources end after they are being used. The fact that most decks in 60 cards formats can ignore a graveyard in most cases also does not help when a standard player switches to Commander. A 100 card singleton is a very different beast than any 60 card format when you can run up to 4 copies of a card. Each card is unique, and once it goes into a graveyard, there's no way of drawing another copy from your deck. And that's probably why the mill is so hated in Commander games. You take away the toys of people before they have a chance to play with them. Unless, of course, you think about it in a different way. Cards in graveyard are visible and you can interact with them in a much easier way than with those in your library. Of course, your opponents also have access to this information, but in many ways cards in graveyard are as useful as cards in hand. They just need a little something to reach the same level. So, with that lengthy intro out of the way, let's talk about some mechanics that make use of your graveyard. Starting with Flashback. This is something you can find on your instants and sorceries. An ability that allows you to cast the spell from graveyard instead of your hand. Usually the cost is a little bit higher, but some cases flip this rule and have flashback cost that is cheaper than normal. It's a designer's way to hint that this card should find a way to your graveyard in a different way than casting it, like discarding it or milling from your library. The most well-known card that showcases the power of this ability is Past in Flames. Not only does it have flashback itself, but its main effect is giving the flashback ability to all instant and sorceries in your graveyard. Almost all Storm or Spellslinger style decks should have this in their consideration list. It can really save your butt when it comes to using resources. It can also find a slot in a deck that has only a few spells, but each of them has a very high impact on the game. Flashback comes not only in form of mana costs. Dredge Returns allows us to cast it from the graveyard for the cost of sacrificing 3 creatures. If you build your deck right, it's basically free. Conflagrate, on the other hand, requires us to discard some cards during the flashback cast. And while it may be a downside on paper, in a deck that can cast Enter the Infinite, it offers a cheap and tricky in condition. Next on the list is Flashback's younger brother, Escape. Designed for the lore of Theros Beyond Death, it is responsible for some bans in 60 card formats. Turns out that casting the same spell multiple times is broken, even if there's an additional cost of exiling some cards from your graveyard. The most hated example of this mechanic is Underworld Breach. It was so bad it even got banned in Modern. In Commander it has its proper place on the game changer list. Having the ability to cast something many times during one turn is easily broken. Other honorable mentions include the 3 Titans, Uro, Roxa and Flage, and Cling to Dust, which is a very flexible piece of interaction with minimal opportunity cost. For many players, Dredge was a serious design mistake. Many cards with this ability were banned in various formats. Dredge decks operate on a very different axis than the rest of Magic, and are extremely powerful if you are not ready for them. The innocent ability of replacing drawing a card with milling a specific amount of cards and returning a Dredge card from the graveyard to your hand can result in 20-30 cards landing in the graveyard during one turn. You build your deck right, of course. In Vintage and Legacy, players quickly found out the package of cards that allowed them to flood the board with a bunch of creatures, with a combination of Breach from Below, Narcomoeba and Prized Amalgam. That's a little harder to do in Commander, but not impossible. Especially in a deck helmed by the Gitrog monster, who can just go through its library at the Shinkansen-like speed if you had Dagmor Salvage at hand. Most players face delve spells during their first visit on Tarkir, while facing such fun cards like Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time. The mechanic is much older, having been first printed in Future Sight, but the Tarkir cards showed the world how broken it can be. While Murderous Cat is quite balanced, the 2 blue spells mentioned earlier are now banned in Modern and Legacy. They are also restricted in Vintage, which should give you at least some ideas about their raw power. In Commander they are a little bit weaker, that's the part of Singleton format, but are still very powerful if used right. Not to mention we have other options to eat our graveyard for profit. Temporal Trespass, Empty the Pits, Afterlife from the Loam, or even Tasigur, the Golden Fang. Just remember not to go overboard. Delve spells eat the graveyard very fast. Harmonize is another one from Tarkir, this time from the Dragonstorm set. It has only a few noteworthy spells, but those are very easy inclusions in the deck of their collabs. Nature's Rhythm is a very good creature tutor. The fact you can use it at least 2 times without any additional cost is just gravy. Discounting the second casting cost by tapping something with high power pushes this into realm of almost auto-include in any creature-based deck. On the other hand, Winter Night Stories is very deck dependent. In some cases it's just an okay draw spell. In other, it's a great card advantage tool that is also an enabler for more graveyard BS. Not an auto-include, but a good card to be aware of. Third spot on this mini list goes to the Songcrafter Mage. A cousin of Snapcaster Mage, works best with big splashy spells. At the baseline, he enables the second cast. You can tap him to get a 3 mana discount on the Harmonize, which covers the casting cost of the mage. In the Magical Christmas Land, you can give Harmonize ability to some kind of X spell, like Exsanguinate or Comet Storm, and then tap your 40/40 Mana Gorger Hydra for a discount. Color requirements are quite high, but this card is also something worth considering during deck building. I was thinking a lot about this one. Delirium is not exactly ability that you can use from a graveyard, but rather something you need your graveyard for. But I think it counts. And there are a few cards you should be aware of that has this ability. Demonic Council is a demonic tutor with extra steps. If you have some demons in the deck, its baseline value skyrockets. But the Delirium is not exactly hard to get in black decks. Drag to the Roots is a little overcosted at mana value 4, but if Delirium is active, getting rid of any type of non-land permanent for just 2 mana is a very good deal. If you're planning on filling your graveyard, this one should be on your list of problem solvers. Shifting Woodlands is great. No, really. Ability to change itself into any permanent from your graveyard for just 4 mana is a very good thing, especially on a land card. But remember to not morph into planeswalkers. You get no loyalty counters, since the permanent is not entering the field, and this will go straight to the graveyard. On the other hand, Omniscience is a very good choice of target to morph into. Violent Urge, similar to Temur Battle Rage, is a combat trick that can just end a player out of nowhere if your setup is right. It goes into Prowess or Stompy decks that want to use their commander in combat, and it's a very nasty surprise for just 1 red mana. But remember that Delirium must be active during the spell resolution and not after. So if there's no other instant spell in your graveyard, better count those card types again. Retrace is another one of those niche mechanics that most people have no idea about. There's not much good cards with it attached, and that's probably why. Raven's Crime and Una's Grace can work well in some specific decks. Their effect is not exactly great, but if you're flooded with lands, there's at least something you can do with them. Formless Genesis is a little bit higher on the power level axis. You can make noticeable board state with it, and it can be fun to build around. However, the reason I even talk about Retrace here is just one card. 6 from Modern Horizons 3. Giving all non-land permanents in your graveyard Retrace is a big deal, especially if you're running Live from the Loam. If your opponents don't run Graveyard Hate, you can just drown them in value. On top of that, 6 is a green creature with mana value 3. That means a lot of tutoring options and easy reanimation from the graveyard. As usual, there's a lot more mechanics that utilize graveyard in some way. But in my opinion they are harder to utilize in a non-dedicated deck or just weak. Those mentioned on the list can find their place in most Commander decks. Not all at once, of course. You should pick up those that fits your team and game plan the most. Or just pick those that will trigger the mill player in your playgroup the most. Nothing wrong with that. Like, share, subscribe and all that YouTube things. And if you have any topic that you like highlighted here, just let me know. See you in the next one.